April 12, 1945. On a muddy track outside the village of Eichenwalde, deep in the collapsing heart of Germany, rain falls. Not a cleansing spring shower, but a cold, persistent drizzle that soaks through wool and chills the bone. It turns the rich German soil into a greedy, boot-sucking mire. The air is thick with the ghosts of recent violence, the acrid tang of burnt timber, the metallic scent of cordite, and the cloying sweetness of churned earth. The war here is over, but the sounds of its departure still echo from the low gray sky, a distant, percussive crump of American artillery finding a new target miles to the east. The grinding complaint of a half-track's treads as it negotiates a shell crater. For Corporal Frank Rizzo, Company B, 27th Armored Infantry Battalion, the world has shrunk to the dripping brim of his M1 helmet and the rhythmic squelch of his boots. He is 20 years old, but his eyes, deep set in a face smudged with grime and exhaustion, hold the ancient weariness of a man 3 times his age. His M1 Garand is a familiar weight in his hands, but it feels heavier today. The fight for Eichenwalde had been short, a spasm of desperate, futile resistance from a handful of old men in mismatched uniforms and teenagers with faces too smooth for the cynical art of killing. Now comes the aftermath, the processing. Before him is the harvest of this small victory, a ragged column of German prisoners. There are perhaps 30 of them, a few weary Wehrmacht soldiers, their Feldgrau uniforms stained and torn, a cluster of boys, no older than 16, members of the Hitler Youth, their bravado shattered into a glaze of shock and fear. And then there are the women, 5 of them, dressed in the dark blue-gray uniforms of the Flakhelferinnen, the female anti-aircraft auxiliaries. They had been manning an 88mm gun on the ridge overlooking the town, a gun that had brewed up a Sherman tank before being silenced by mortar fire. Rizzo walks the line, his rifle held at a loose port arms. His job, along with a handful of other GIs from his platoon, is to keep them moving, to march them back to the collection point where the trucks are waiting. He doesn't look at their faces. It's easier that way. They are just shapes, obstacles to be managed, a task to be completed before he can maybe find a dry barn, a sea ration, and a few hours of dreamless sleep. You learn early on to build a wall inside yourself. You see the enemy, you fight the enemy, you process the enemy. You don't think about their homes, their mothers, their lives, before they were just a target in your sights. But the rain has a way of washing away such defenses. It seeps into everything, blurring the lines. One of the women stumbles. She's young, maybe his sister's age. Her blonde hair, once neatly pinned up under her service cap, has come loose, plastered to her pale cheek by the rain. She catches herself, her hand bracing against the wet flank of a dead horse lying by the roadside. Her gaze flickers up, a brief, terrified scan of the American soldiers guarding them. Her eyes meet Rizzo's for less than a second. It's a collision. In that fleeting moment, he sees not a uniform, not an enemy gunner, but a girl who is cold and hungry and frightened half to death. He looks away quickly, his jaw tightening. He barks a short, gruff command in English she can't possibly understand. Keep it moving. Let's go. It's for his own benefit as much as hers. The wall needs to be rebuilt, stone by stone. But the image of her face is already a crack in the foundation. He can feel the cold seeping through. He adjusts the strap of his rifle, the wet leather creaking, and continues the slow, miserable march down the road, trying to forget the flicker of humanity he just saw in the heart of the enemy. But her eyes follow him, a silent question, in the gray, unforgiving afternoon.
The road dissolves into a river of mud. Every step is a struggle, a negotiation with the earth itself. For the prisoners, the journey is a descent into a private hell of exhaustion and despair. For the American guards, it is a tedious, nerve-wracking duty. The war is not yet won. Partisans, holdouts, the desperate and the fanatical could still be hiding in the dripping pine forests that press in on either side of the road. Every snap of a twig, every rustle in the undergrowth makes fingers tighten on triggers. The GIs are spread out, their vigilance a palpable force field around the shuffling column. Liesl Schmidt feels the cold not just on her skin, but inside her bones. She is 19. 3 months ago, she was a student in Leipzig, dreaming of becoming a librarian. Then the conscription notice arrived. Now she is a prisoner of war, marching through a landscape of ruin. The 88mm anti-aircraft gun she had learned to load and aim is now a twisted wreck on a muddy hill. Her comrades, the other girls from her unit, are scattered. 2 are dead. The rest are here, lost in their own worlds of fear. Propaganda films had shown them what to expect. The Americans, they were told, were gangsters and degenerates, little better than the Bolshevik hordes from the East. Every story she had ever heard now plays on a loop in her mind, a soundtrack to the rhythmic squelch of her own worn boots. Her left ankle throbs with a dull, persistent ache. She must have twisted it when the mortar round hit near their gun pit, throwing her against the muddy revetment. The pain is a constant, nagging reminder of her helplessness. She tries to hide her limp, to match the pace of the others, terrified of showing weakness. To be seen as a burden is to be seen as disposable. This is the logic of survival that has taken root in her mind. So she bites her lip, focuses on the back of the woman in front of her, and forces one foot in front of the other. Corporal Rizzo watches her from the side of the column. He had tried to put her out of his mind, but he keeps finding his eyes drawn back to her. He sees the slight hesitation in her step, the way she favors her right leg. He's seen that kind of injury 100 times. A sprain, maybe a small fracture. Not life-threatening, but on a march like this, it's agony. He sees the grim set of her jaw, the forced discipline in her posture. She is trying not to be noticed, and that, more than anything, gets to him. He thinks of his own sister, back in Brooklyn, who would cry if she broke a nail. War has made this German girl hard, but it's a brittle hardness. He can see the cracks. The column halts. Up ahead, a jeep is trying to pull a supply truck from the mud, its engine whining in protest. The pause is a brief, welcome respite for most, but for Liesel, it's a disaster. When her forward momentum stops, her ankle screams. The muscles, held taut for so long, spasm. A wave of dizziness washes over her. The gray sky, the dark trees, the indifferent faces of the American soldiers all swirl into a meaningless vortex of color. Her knee buckles. With a small, stifled cry, she collapses, her hands sinking into the cold, wet mud of the road. Her world shrinks to the searing pain in her ankle and the sudden, terrifying realization that she is now the center of attention. She is weak. She is a burden. And one of the American guards is turning, breaking away from the line, and walking directly toward her.
The American soldier is a giant. That is Liesel's first thought as he approaches, a towering silhouette against the bleak, colorless sky. His helmet casts his face in deep shadow, making him anonymous, a faceless instrument of the war that has consumed her world. The mud sucks at his boots with a sound like a hungry mouth. Each step he takes toward her is a hammer blow against her already frayed nerves. Her heart hammers against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone. This is it. This is the moment the propaganda warned her about. The weak are culled from the herd. Corporal Frank Rizzo sees only a scared kid who has fallen in the mud. His sergeant, a wiry man from Tennessee named Calloway, barks from further up the line. "Rizzo, what the hell you doing? Get her up. We ain't got all day." "Yes, Arch, I got it," Rizzo mutters, never taking his eyes off the girl. He doesn't have a plan. Help her up, maybe? Tell her to walk it off? But the words feel useless. He doesn't speak a word of German beyond a few shouted commands he'd picked up. She doesn't speak English. They are separated by a chasm of language and a wall of war. He stops a few feet from her. She is huddled on the ground, trying to make herself smaller, to disappear into the earth. Her eyes are wide with a primal fear he recognizes, the fear of a cornered animal. He holds up one hand, palm open, the universal gesture for stop or easy. It's a gesture he's used to calm spooked horses back on his uncle's farm. "Hey, it's okay," he says, his voice softer than he intends. "You're okay." The words are meaningless noise to her. She hears only the alien cadence of the enemy's language. His tone, meant to be reassuring, is low and gravelly, and to her terrified ears, it sounds menacing. He takes another step closer, crouching down slightly to get on her level. The movement is slow, deliberate, but in her mind, it is the pounce of a predator. All she can see is the M1 Garand slung over his shoulder, the heavy steel of his helmet, the grim determination she projects onto his shadowed face. He sees the pain etched around her eyes, the shiver that runs through her slender frame. It's not just the cold, it's shock. He knows that look. He'd seen it on his buddy's face right after he'd been hit by shrapnel on the Ruhr River. Shock and hunger. They drain a person of everything. An idea clicks in his mind, a simple, basic human need. He can't fix her ankle, he can't end the war, he can't send her home, but there is one small thing he can do. He keeps his eyes on hers, trying to convey his intent through his gaze alone. Slowly, he begins to move his right hand. He doesn't reach for his canteen. He doesn't reach for a first aid pouch. He reaches toward the front of his field jacket, his fingers fumbling for the button on his breast pocket. To him, the action is simple, logical.
He's going for the one thing he has that might help, a D-ration chocolate bar. Concentrated, high energy, a small taste of something other than fear and misery. But Liesel does not see a man reaching for a piece of chocolate. She sees the sudden, sharp movement. She sees his hand plunge into the dark interior of his coat. Her mind, conditioned by months of fear and horrific stories, fills in the blank. A pistol, a knife. He is reaching for a weapon to finish her, the weak straggler who was holding up the column. The world narrows to that one terrible motion. Her breath catches in her throat, a strangled gasp. All the strength leaves her body, replaced by a wave of pure, unadulterated terror. Her voice is a thin, reedy whisper, a plea lost in the vast, indifferent silence of the forest. Bitte, she breathes, shaking her head, tears welling in her eyes. Bitte, tun Sie mir nicht weh. Please, please don't hurt me.
The German words hang in the damp air, fragile and sharp. Frank Rizzo freezes, his hand still inside his jacket. He doesn't understand the language, but he understands the tone. It is the sound of absolute terror. It is the sound of a human being begging for their life. For a moment, the entire scene snaps into a horrifying, inverted perspective. He looks down at himself, the big American soldier in combat gear, rifle slung over his shoulder, looming over a fallen, unarmed girl. He sees what she sees, and his stomach turns over. No, he says quickly, pulling his hand back as if he'd been burned. He holds both hands up, palms out, away from his body. Easy. Take it easy. Her eyes are locked on him, wide and swimming with tears. She's trembling violently now, a cornered fawn waiting for the killing blow. He realizes his mistake. The sudden movement, reaching inside his coat. Of course. What else would she think? He feels a flush of shame, a deep, gut-wrenching pity that is so powerful it almost makes him dizzy. This is what the war has done. It has made an act of kindness look like a threat of murder. Calloway's voice cuts through the tension again, impatient. Rizzo, for Christ's sake, get a move on. Rizzo ignores him. He has to fix this. He has to undo the terror he has accidentally caused. Moving with an exaggerated slowness, as if handling a wild animal, he once again reaches for his jacket. This time he does it differently. He keeps his eyes on hers, never breaking contact. He uses only his fingertips, pinching the fabric of the pocket and pulling it open. Then, slowly, painstakingly, he withdraws his hand. In his fingers is not a weapon. It is a small, rectangular block wrapped in brown, waxed paper, a U.S. Army Field Ration D. It's not a delicacy. The bar is dense, slightly bitter, designed not to melt in the heat and to provide a burst of energy. To a soldier, it's fuel. But right now, in this muddy lane in the middle of a broken country, it is something else entirely. It is a peace offering. It is proof. He holds it out to her. The small brown package rests on his dirt-caked palm. He doesn't say a word. He just waits. Liesel stares at the object. Her mind struggles to process what she is seeing. A chocolate bar. Not a pistol, not a knife. Chocolate. The dissonance is overwhelming. The reality is so far removed from her expectation that for a long second, she cannot react. Her fear, a raging fire just moments ago, is doused by a flood of confusion. She looks from the chocolate bar up to his face. For the first time, she sees past the helmet and the uniform. She sees his eyes. They are not cold or cruel. They are tired. And they are looking at her with an expression she has not seen from an enemy, from anyone, in a very long time. It looks like pity, concern. The tension in her shoulders begins to unclench, muscle by muscle. The frantic beating of her heart slows. She looks back at the offering in his hand. Her stomach growls, a hollow, aching sound that she is sure he can hear. She hasn't eaten anything but a stale crust of bread in 2 days. The thought of food, of something sweet, is a physical shock, a sudden, sharp longing that cuts through the fear. Still, she hesitates. To accept a gift from the enemy feels like a betrayal, a surrender of a different kind, but to refuse it feels insane. He is still holding it out, his arms steady, his expression patient. The rain drips from the rim of his helmet and lands on the waxed paper of the ration bar. It is a small, quiet moment suspended in time, an island of stillness in the middle of the war. The entire world seems to be holding its breath, waiting to see if she will bridge the last few inches between them.
Slowly, as if lifting a great weight, Liesel raises a trembling hand. Her fingers, caked with mud, are clumsy. She reaches out and, for a fleeting second, her fingertips brush against his calloused palm. The contact is electric, a jolt of shared, fragile humanity. She takes the chocolate bar. It feels solid, real, impossibly heavy in her grasp. She pulls her hand back and cradles the small package in her lap, as if it were a precious jewel. She looks up at him, her eyes still wet with tears, but the terror is gone. In its place is a profound, bewildered gratitude. She wants to say thank you, Dankeschön, but the words stick in her throat. A thank you feels too small for this moment. Instead, she just gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Frank Rizzo understands. He gives a small nod in return and slowly stands up. The truce, unspoken and momentary, is over. He turns his back to her and gestures to one of the other guards. "Hey, Miller, give me a hand." Together, they help Liesel to her feet. She winces as she puts weight on her bad ankle, but she manages to stand, leaning heavily on the other soldier. She clutches the D-ration bar tightly in her fist. Sergeant Calloway marches back to them, his face a mask of irritation. "Are we going to stand here all day making friends? The trucks are moving. Let's go, people." He looks at Liesel, then at Rizzo, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes before the hardness returns. "Get her in the back of the Jeep. She can ride the rest of the way. The rest of you, move out." Rizzo helps her hobble over to the Jeep that had been stuck in the mud. The driver, a corporal with a cigarette dangling from his lips, looks at her without interest and gestures to the rear seat. As Rizzo helps her in, she fumbles with the wax paper on the chocolate bar. Her fingers are numb with cold, but she finally manages to tear a corner open. She breaks off a small piece and puts it in her mouth. The taste is overwhelming. It's not sweet and creamy like the chocolate she remembers before the war. It is waxy, dense, and slightly bitter with oat flour. But it is the most wonderful thing she has ever tasted. The rush of sugar is a shock to her system, a jolt of life that spreads warmth through her chest. It is more than just food. It is a reminder of a world that existed before the hunger, before the fear, before the war. A world where a simple piece of chocolate was just a simple piece of chocolate, not a symbol of an enemy's unexpected mercy. Rizzo watches her for a moment, then turns and falls back into his position alongside the shuffling column of prisoners. The Jeep's engine revs, and it pulls away, splashing mud onto his fatigues. He doesn't look back. The moment is gone, swallowed by the machinery of war, which has started to grind forward once more. He readjusts the M1 Garland on his shoulder. It feels a little lighter now. The wall inside him is still there, but the crack remains, a tiny fissure where a small act of kindness broke through. The column marches on, disappearing into the gray mist and the steady weeping rain. In the grand, brutal calculus of World War II, this moment means nothing. It will not be recorded in any history book. It will not change the outcome of a battle or the fate of nations. It is just one quiet, fleeting exchange on a muddy road in a dying empire, between a tired girl in a German uniform and a weary boy from Brooklyn. A misunderstanding, a realization, and a piece of chocolate. A tiny, insignificant flicker of light in an ocean of darkness.